I know Alan can't make it. He has a conflict. And was Valerie going to make it? I don't remember. I don't remember. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Well, good to see everybody. Saw a bunch of you at Pumpkin Ridge, which was great. I guess the first order, I'll call us to order, and the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the July meeting. Today's August. Yeah, July meeting. So hopefully everybody got a chance to read through them and everything. I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes from the July meeting. I'll move. Julie makes a motion.
I'll second them.
Margie seconded the motion. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? I don't think there were any. There we go. Okay, motion passes. Minutes are approved. Thank you, everybody. Let's see here. I guess we'll just go ahead and start in with finances. Debbie sent a bunch of information to everybody. I'm going to go ahead and present that, Debbie.
Yes, we're just going to go over it a little bit. Let me share the screen. Let's see. First, the balances, where they go. Can't find them. Hold on. There we go. Okay, first we'll go with this one. Let's do the cash balances. So, can everyone see? Again, still very flush. The bank balances are good. We have not met as a finance committee to reallocate or reinvest some of these funds, but for now it's good to, I feel it's good. My opinion is that for this year, while we transition for a whole year as this new board, then we can see what exactly our cash flow will be and what we might need to keep in there and what more we can put into Raymond James. I'll have the committee of the separate finance committee to look at that. So for now, we have enough money. We're very flush here. And that is very good because the next one here, I think I sent this to everyone, the race income and race expenses. First, let me look at the top here. The investment income, again, doing well. Maybe you follow the markets a little bit. Last week was sort of a ride in the market, but it's all recovered. And I expect us to keep our investment income going up. It's pretty much conservatively invested, and I think that's a good thing. But again, the finance committee will take a good look at that as we round out a full year of the board coming up. Let's see, dues are right on track, 76%, right around 76% of the year. So I think that's going to be fine as well. Cool. Now sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Race income and expenses, this about the same for the races that have already passed. The solstice run, we didn't have as many of the registrants as we wanted. Duel, that looks better than we thought right there. Less expenses. I don't know if more expenses will come in. I think we've got them all. I think, right, Daniel, do you think we have all expenses?
I believe you have them all. I made a projection mistake, though. The expenses should have been far less on the left. So yeah,
okay,
I said 2,000, 1,500 would have been more accurate.
Okay. Well, and so as you advise others this year in the race, perhaps you'll advise others as they do their race budgets for the races you were in. That would be something to consider.
I think that number was largely because I wasn't sure we were going to get Catlin, and the costs might have been higher if we had to go someplace like Portland Public Schools or Portland Parks and Rec. So
right. Good. Okay. Pumpkin Ridge Run, not all of the income and expenses are in. I believe there will be one more income coming in, but I'm not quite sure. We'll see what race run sign up has to say. The expenses might be in. Do you think we have? I've paid everything that's come through my inbox. Some of it I paid this week, so that is not included because I cut off these numbers last week. So likely Pumpkin Ridge will break even, or make a profit. So that leaves our race net, if you look way at the bottom, not, you know, at minus 7,000 without the final 2 races of the year. Hopefully we'll come up on that, but again, what is our mission of the club is to provide a good experience or races for people. And so while we project income for races, if we break even, that's probably fine too, is what I feel about a nonprofit. So that's what I think on that. We'll, as we get ready to head into the new year, budget wise, I believe that we'll talk about this in a little bit, but yes, I'll be happy to provide any kind of budgeting numbers that people may need for projecting what their races as race directors, what they may need for the races. If prior or former race directors need those numbers to help incoming race directors, I'm always happy to help, especially in the weekdays. But in September, my son's getting married, so I'll be not very available the week right before the Best Damn Run. I'll try, but if you can get anything ahead of that week before Best Damn Run, that's great. If not, I'll do my best to do what we can that week of. So, okay, I think that's.
And I just sent out an email to all the race directors asking them to start working on their budgets, because what we need to do is have them project that so we can do that at our November or December meeting. So I said, work on that and get it to us by the end of October is the goal.
Right. That's a great email. I saw that too. And I'm available to give numbers to any of the race directors if they want to start working on that ahead of time. Otherwise, October, November, we can get that all squared away. I think that's what we have here. Does anyone have any questions or anything you'd like me to address at this time?
Those were the race expenses. You had also sent, I think if you scrolled into the general expenses.
Yes.
How we were doing.
I don't have them all sussed out, but the 1200 Club, we're way below budget on most items. Well, maybe not on all these down below. So the budget was before I came in. So just before, but so I'm trying to match everything up with how we wanted to have it. But if you generally look, it doesn't go over too much. Let's go here. But again, this may change as the new year comes through. Mm-hmm. And all of the details on these are on the documents, on the information I sent out in that email.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. I'm excited to help with budgeting, so just let me know what you may need. Anybody may need.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Let's see. Charissa, communications coordinator update. Did you have anything to update?
Yeah, I have a little presentation, I guess. Hang on. I want to share my screen. If I can figure it out. Sorry. I'm having a very distracting day. Why is it working? Sorry. On top of everything else, I got a new contact lens prescription, which makes everything harder. So what's going on?
Challenging.
But sorry, here we go. Sharing my screen. All right, so yeah. Hi everybody. I asked for a few minutes to talk just because I've been volunteering with the club for over a year and I haven't really said much, so I just want to introduce myself and maybe make it a habit to report out more at board meetings. So first of all, my name, Charissa Young, in case anyone didn't know, that's how you say it. slides. And I did previously volunteer in communications in 2017, 2018. I like to tell my story of how and why I decided to start volunteering for the club. That's because Joe took me to the Duel in 2017. And I am just an ordinary runner. I'm not fast or whatever. So I just thought races were for fast people. You know,
No.
the Duel, and I'd have so much fun. I just couldn't believe it. Like, I got to meet people. I felt like it was not about the fastest person anymore. It was about celebrating what fun everyone could do, doing, you know, whatever they could do. So I just loved it. And I don't know, but it blew me away that there weren't that many people there. Like, everybody in the world should want to be here and love this event. That's just how I felt. So a couple days later, I'm into Facebook, and then I realized some people just didn't get the message. They didn't know that we had moved the date because of weather. And then some other people even said, I've been a member for so many years and I don't even know that they have these other events. So I was just like, maybe I can help with that. I'm on Facebook. I do communication stuff, and I just saw this as an area I could help out in. So that's how I got started. Last year, when the board turned over, well, because everybody resigned, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to. So I jumped back in, and we obviously had some immediate needs with making sure people knew what was going on, that, you know, who the new board members were, why things were changing, how they were changing quickly. And we made a lot of changes, of course. And I cared about those changes too, because we had compliance issues we were trying to address quickly, you know, within a reasonable amount of time with the number of board of directors, their bylaws being outdated, and reinstituting elections, which we hadn't had. I looked this up since 1997. I just went years. So those were big deal changes, and maybe the average member may or may not appreciate that, but to me that was really important because I've been involved in multiple nonprofits actually since 2017, 2018, since the last time I volunteered. So my understanding of nonprofits and how they should be run really grew in that time. And then of course, I hope the club will survive. So I care about its sustainability, like our membership and volunteers and how things evolve over time. So things I've been doing, it's not necessarily just about communications. It's been how I can help whenever there was a need. I helped set up the Zoom account. I record the Zoom account, the Zoom meetings. I put the board meetings up on YouTube, as you probably all know. I've helped upload photos to SmugMug when we had new photographers, troubleshoot Constant Contact, and you know, I'm here. I have a lot of technology and media, social media and communications, email experience from work, so I'm happy to help with that. And then I thought I was doing plenty, but because Tracy came up with the President's Challenge, I was like, oh, I had motivation to even come to every event and volunteer more. I gotta give you credit. I mean,
It's working.
it made a difference. I did things I never thought I'd do. And actually, I think it's awesome because I tried things I wouldn't have otherwise. And I found that I like doing the setup the day before. And I actually like digging through the trash and sorting out compost. And who knew? Anyway, so great. I hope we can keep coming up with incentives for people to try things like that. And I wanted to mention some things that I think we can do that'll help me help you better. So sometimes I find out when signups gone live, to an email I just got, but it's an email that everyone just got, and I realized, oh, the website doesn't have all that same content yet. So I don't know if we can somehow bring that into sync better, but if I, you know that email is going to go up, I can make sure the website is consistent with that.
Yeah.
And then, or if you can involve me even sooner, then I can help maybe proofread or test run sign up or help a little bit with typos or link corrections or anything. But just tell me, like, also, sometimes I realize a little too late. We could have used more volunteers, or that we had enough volunteers. It doesn't happen as often, but that's happened. And similarly, we usually want to encourage registrations, but last year we had like garlic festival and turkey trot. Well, maybe we didn't want more registrations. So I don't want to assume that we always want more. So just, if I can help with that, let me know. I don't mention here, but I've also helped recruit help for Facebook and the website. So that's Dave Barnes is also helping with the website, and Jesse is also helping with Facebook. And I hope we can keep recruiting people, because the more hands that know how to do the different things, of course, we're better off.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just want to see us get things down better, and I'm happy to help. And if you have any questions about how anything works that I'm involved with, I'm happy to answer. And I was thinking maybe in future months I can talk about more specific things like Strava or Facebook that I do, or answer any other questions and report on more specific things that I've done recently as time goes by. Any questions or anything?
Yeah,
I just have a big compliment to you, Charissa, because you have done such an amazing job. The updates to the bylaws and was a lot of work, and then working with our RCA, Jane Mack, and that probably took a lot of time and effort, and just that alone was an amazing job. And then the work that you do with the communication, your Facebook posts and everything else. When the change occurred about a year ago, it was kind of dicey, and I just want to compliment you. Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
well, I want to thank all of you for changing the climate and stepping up also and helping, because I mean, this year went faster than I expected. I mean, it was a lot of work. It was busy, but I'm almost like, wow, a year's passed already, and thank you for being open and collaborative and always willing to listen. I mean,
Yep. Mhm.
it's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, you've been super helpful when we turned run sign up on, and then you'll test it and go, oh, this doesn't work. Let's fix it. And then getting it consistent with our website too. It's been really helpful. So you've done an awesome job.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. There was something that was on the website that I wanted to add to the agenda, and it was basically requests from other agencies to post their event on our Facebook page, because I get a lot of emails from people saying, hey, we're having this event, can you send an announcement to your members or to put a newsletter? And I've always said no, simply because we have so many requests, and we're also trying to market our own events, that I don't want to dilute our marketing. But I thought I should ask the board what everybody's philosophy was on that, because we could do that. We could put them on our Facebook page to encourage things. We wouldn't necessarily include them in our e-newsletters, but it probably wouldn't hurt to put them on the Facebook page to let people know there's other events out there other than our own, as long as it doesn't dilute our marketing for our own events. So I just wanted to hear what you all thought about that question, philosophy.
Historically, that's been the ORC policy. We've never, unless it was an ORC event or a co-sponsored event, where ORC, was partnered with somebody for an event. We've not listed or done publicity for other events. I mean, historically, that's the way it's been for the reason you stated. You know, we want to promote ours first. The only way that I could see, and I think that's a good policy, you know, because advertising is in some ways an endorsement. And if we just put something out, oh, my friend is doing a race, and we put it out there and something doesn't go well, you know, well, Orc said it was okay, kind of a thing. And I know how what some clubs do is, I mean, they'll have a race calendar, just a generic, you know, as many websites do. And that's the kind of, I don't think Orc has ever done that, but that would be a fair amount of work to format it, set it up, you know, and you're also kind of reinventing the wheel. There are many, you know, Race Center Northwest is a great example, or Oregon Live, both have race calendars. So if Orc were to have another race calendar, it'd be like, well, why? Because other people do it already. So I don't know. I mean, that's historically been a policy, and I mean, speaking only for myself, I'm happy with it. You know, there are many calendars out there, and if somebody wants to promote a race, you know, they too can use social media.
Charissa, you had your hand up.
I think Daniel was first.
Oh, Daniel, go ahead.
Usually I'm in full agreement with Mark. This time I actually have my own feelings. I remember back when I started with this club, and I don't want to be the old guy that says back in the day, but our ODR, the back 4 or 5 pages, was dedicated to any race that wanted to put their information on that page, and it became the definitive calendar in the whole area. And that's where you would look. You would join the club just to get to the calendar. If people could start looking to our website to be, hey, this is where I'm going to find out about races in general. I know the Run, I don't use it. I use the Run Oregon calendar for that listing. So there are now resources out there that have supplanted that. I blame Al Gore for that a lot because he invented the internet. And by inventing the internet, we are now, I mean, that was when we were in a print world and we had the resources to do it. And Gordon spent a good 20% of his time in the office keeping that calendar up to date.
Yeah.
And so as a rule, I have no issue with it. I don't, I think it's fine. I get the arguments on both sides, but I think it's fine if these are organizations that are established and have a reputation. I'm fine putting their stuff on our website. As long as you come in and look at our stuff too.
Charissa?
Yeah, it's true that we used to not promote other events or other like non-org events, like Mark was saying back in 2017. But I kind of favor like a philosophy of co-promotion. Like we care about our mission. So if another nonprofit is having something that does not conflict with an org event, you know, we'd promote our event first. But what if it's, I don't know, something else that is a cause we believe in that doesn't conflict with us? Maybe they would promote our club in return, and that's a good thing. It's just a thought. But yeah, I think there's an opportunity to kind of for co-promotion.
Carissa, that prompts 2 thoughts for me. One, the first thought is to agree with you if it's co-promotion, like I'll do yours if you do mine, a quid pro quo, you know, if that, you know, that kind of a thing, you know, next time one of ours rolls around, you'll give, you know, something for it too. I mean, if there's something in that. The other thing too, again, about looking at co-sponsored events a bit more broadly. For example, Liberty High School, I don't know if they've done it recently, but in years past, Liberty High School has had a run. And since we, as our community grant, give money to Liberty Fit, it seems to me it would be appropriate to promote any running events at Liberty High School. You know, it's technically not a co-sponsored event, but, you know, we want to support Liberty Fit. Let's support Liberty High School. to my mind too. Like I know, like the city of Banks, the Banks High School Boosters put on a run every spring, and they host the Vernonia Marathon. So there's a connection there where it, to my mind, it would be appropriate to, you know, promote a race like that, because that we, you know, there's already a relationship there. You know, that to me, that would be, you know, appropriate.
Margie?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up also with what Daniel was saying. Historically, we had part of our mission was to be the community resource. And back in the day when it wasn't so easy to get the information of where the races are, who's putting on a race and so forth, by promoting other races, you know, it was kind of being that community resource where people would come to ORRC and look. With options now with other Facebook and so forth, I can see where that can be a little bit more diluted. And maybe we just focus on if it's another nonprofit, as opposed to a for-profit race group. I don't know, Terrapin or someone else like that, if they came to us and said, hey, we would, unless like they, what is it? Why Racing? What is it? Why Racing is allowing some of our members a discount and so forth. So in a way, that's promoting their races. So, but I think I like the idea of if there's going to be partnerships, maybe with nonprofits. Yeah, because there's just so many other ways to find race information, I think.
It's hard because there's the time where when Tracy talks about, we get stuff all the time, we'll give your members, you know, $10 off our event if you would promote it on your website, or we don't know who these people are, or that it's their first race of their, we don't know, are they a nonprofit? They might say they are, but they haven't, not an official nonprofit. They're just a group trying to raise money for something that might be a good idea, but we don't know. And so I agree with Mark. If we have a connection like Liberty Fit or something, then maybe we would, it's appropriate. But otherwise, they're trying to promote every single race.
We do get quite a few.
We get quite a
I mean,
few.
I probably get one a week to a couple of months, and I wouldn't want to promote all of them because I don't know these people.
Right.
Also quite a few that come from out of state too, and I'm like, I don't necessarily want to promote something in Washington for a group in an area that I have no clue who they are. So, but that being said, I agree with all of your opinions. I don't really have any skin in the game. I'm good to go if we want to.
Just need to know what to tell people.
We just need to know what to tell people
Consistently.
Yeah. Deb?
And would there have to be a special page that would be community resource or something like that? Yeah, I don't know, but
I feel like Run Oregon kind of has taken over the calendar, and make no mistake, like they're getting reimbursed for the promoting that they're doing. When they review products, when they review races, their writers get a free entry. So in some way or another, they're being compensated. I'd be almost certain that they are getting compensated for the races that they feature on their front page. I don't know if that's for sure, but so I don't know. I'm a little hesitant unless we have a known relationship. And you know, certainly like if we're doing things like a shout out on our website to Liberty Fit and things that they're doing, that's actually self-promotion too, because we can be like, very selfishly, we can be saying how we have supported them through a community outreach grant. Or if we're doing a shout out to the Banks cross country team, we can say they provided a bunch of volunteers for the Vernonia Marathon. So I don't mind us being a little selfish, and in that we have to think about how it's promoting us as well, in our relationship with them, how they've helped us. And I don't mean to sound like a mercenary exactly, but you know, promotion isn't free. I bet those people who email you send it on like a list where they just
I'm sure. Yeah.
cut and paste it, you know, and they're just trying to get, like, if they get 5% hits that are yes, that's a win for them because it's all free for them. So anyway, I don't know if that clarifies anything.
I get those emails from professional runners in Africa who, hey, give me a free entry to your marathon. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, give me a free entry to your marathon. It's like, none of that.
How about we do this? We have already said on my to-do list, which I haven't worked on yet, starting on a ORRC policies and procedures type manual, and we can add that as a section. And I think we would need to create a policy for a couple different things. We don't have a calendar anymore, so that's not really relevant. But the issues are, would we put it on our Facebook page, or would we send an email out to all of our members, or include something in our e-newsletter? So those are kind of the three things we get the requests for. And so maybe what I can do is write up like a draft policy for all three types of requests, and can bring it back to next month, and we can kind of discuss what we feel about it. Does that sound good? I'm seeing a lot of nodding.
It's starting point.
Yep, sounds really good.
Okay, we will do that then. Next one, I sent out, this is just last minute, the rental agreement form. We have people who rent our equipment, and we're updating it to make sure we have a proper listing of what we have. And the main question we had with it was our new sound system, because on the old rental form, we had multiple sound systems, and we said, well, we'll rent out the old sound system, but not the new one. Well, now we've gotten rid of all of those, and we have a brand new one. And the question is, do we want to rent out that sound system? I'm inclined not to, just because I worry if it gets busted and stuff, and then that wanted to double check with all of you guys before we made a decision on
I
that.
could not agree with you more.
Okay.
I've been fighting sound systems with races for 15 years, and we finally, for the first time, we are not fighting that, and I don't want to go back to that. Plus, if we overuse it, then we're creating other problems. I cannot agree with you more. Let's keep it off the rental list. They can rent a system from somebody
The bullhorn. They can rent the bullhorn, but not the sound system. Margie?
Maybe put it on the rental list at a price that no one's going to take. No one's going to rent it at $1.5 million. Okay.
Yeah. Currently on the form, the only thing we say we don't rent out are the first aid kits and the AED unit. And what we would do is just add and sound system to that. Mm-hmm. We do have a digital clock, which we can rent out. Yeah. Yeah, Mark?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was going to say, we have a digital clock that
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay.
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. With the sound system, I agree with Daniel.
All right. I'm seeing thumbs up on all that. So I will let Jeff know, and we will update that form. So when anybody puts in a request, they know they can't get that. All right. I want to do these two before we do recap. Okay. Before we do recap, I wanted to just touch base on the schedule of events for 2025. I updated it, so I think everything is correct. There may be some movement around there. Eric Lillenberg is currently co-RDing with Hal and Carrie for Pumpkin Ridge next year, but he has also expressed interest in possibly helping out with Solstice. I don't think he could do both, so he may be switching, but not sure about that one. And still looking for a possible additional co-RD for Turkey Trot for that one. So dates and RDs I think are finalized. So does anybody have any questions just specifically about the races for next year? We are going to drop Best Dam Run. We've already started marketing that, and we're adding Autumn Leaves, and that will be on October 18th. It'll be a 30K, 50K, and 50 mile down to Shampooey. Any questions about that? Okay.
Do we have director for that?
Yeah, that's going to be Deb Brown and Nikki Halen. We're going to take it on. And Noel and Brett Henry have also said they will help out with questions, kind of be advisors for that, mentors for that.
You said November for that?
That's for October 18th. Yeah.
Are we going to have an equipment problem between that and Dam Run?
Dam Run is being canceled. We're not going to do Dam Run. We're canceling it. because we did not get RDs for it.
So this year's the last.
So
best
we're
ever.
advertising it, marketing it as the last chance to get your best damn run time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. The other events that are pretty much set, we've reserved the room for the annual business, no, not the annual, the banquet. That's going to be at Spaghetti Factory. Board membership meeting is set for the January meeting. Be basically for a couple of the things, the Shamrock Run Expo, that's going to be 2 days. The member volunteer picnic, the Portland Marathon Expo for next year, possibly the Portland Marathon Expo aid station for next year. We just need coordinators for those, but we do have the dates for those already. And so then the question is about the President's Challenge. I'm working with Jeff Huber because I don't know how many have actually doing the big President's Challenge of all events in volunteering. But looking at the results for the 5K challenge, there were only 3 people who completed the 5K challenge. There's 5 so far left in the 10K challenge. There's still one 10K to go, the best damn run. There were no completers of the 10 Mile Plus challenge. So we had one person going into Pumpkin Ridge and they did not do Pumpkin Ridge. So there's nobody there. So I don't have numbers for the presidents. I think there's more people doing that with combination of participation and volunteering. So I wanted to have a discussion about what we wanted to do with that for next year. I had a couple of recommendations, and one of them was to say not do a specific 5K, 10K, or 10 Mile Plus or President's Challenge, but just have one challenge. You could kind of create your own. So you could, anybody who does 6, 8, or 10 events gets a prize of any combination of distance. Another one was to do just a 10K challenge because we will have 4 10Ks. And Nikki, I think, or was it Carrie? I forget which one. I always forget which. She showed us something that was super cool, and it was in Ohio where they have this was a series of races where they have 4 races, each has a different medal, and all the medals link up to create one big medal, which I thought was way cool. And she sent a picture, and I should have forwarded it to you guys. It was really neat. And there was also another one where they had a race. If you did it every year, 4 years in a row, it was a different medal, but then there was a pedestal. You could put all the medals on it, and it created like an Ohio skyline or something like that. Anyway, so I thought that might be kind of fun to do something unique for like a 10K challenge, have a different 10K challenge medal for each event that you could put together. Or just not do anything with the President's Challenge for next year because it's not knowing, you know what the response was. What do you guys all think?
I like the build your own thing. You
Mhm.
know, it's flexible. I think the more flexible that it is, the more people will get involved. So I think, you know, DIY, build your own kind of thing. And I've seen, you know, like the whole medal thing where it's multiple kind of things, and Ashworth Awards, you know, the ones that most of us use, you know, the RCA company, sponsoring company, does that sort of thing. But you know, I don't know. I am, as an RD, I want to get away from medals. It's just so much stuff. And you know, it's always, anytime you're ordering medals, there's Daniel cheering. Is, you know, ordering in sufficient quantities, guessing the right amount of quantities. I mean, it's just, t-shirts are challenge enough because you got to put your order in 2 weeks ahead, and with medals you're looking at months ahead, and I just wouldn't want the guesswork of all of that. And like I said, I think people have enough stuff. You know, my real trend, why I love socks so much, or giving away socks, is because it's one size fits all. It's a useful item, and you know, and I'd rather give people a pair of socks than a finisher medal. Having said that, Vernonia, you know, I will continue because people expect that. Marathon, half marathon, Vernonia, I will continue to do finisher medals. But I, you know, for Ralph's Run, for Hag Road, I've got some leftover, and my intention is to give them away over time. But after that, just kind of be done with shiny stuff. You know, I don't need more shiny stuff. I don't think anybody
Margie?
else does either.
Margie?
So perhaps thinking in terms of a president challenge for volunteering and a president challenge for races.
Mhm.
So separate out the two. So someone who does an extraordinary amount of volunteering at races, it shows up every time. Or, you know, again, if you want to do the 10K distances or the half marathons or whatever. But I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. I think it's good to do separate out volunteering from participation because it's easier to find them that way. Mhm. So we have Joel.
Not counting turkey trot.
Joel is saying would encourage choose your own and could we mix it? But I do like Margie's idea of doing a separate one. And the prizes could be different too, because if it's a participation thing, one of the prizes could be free entries to the next year's events versus volunteering. You're not necessarily doing the events. So getting free entries isn't necessarily going to help you, but we can give them something else maybe.
Yeah, I
so
think in terms of runners sometimes injure themselves, right? But we can still be
Oh.
involved with the club. Yeah, imagine. But we can still be involved with the club by being at the races and helping out.
Yeah.
To
So-
make the challenge, if we just say one for volunteering and one for racing, for example, and we did a do it your, and the racing was a do it your own, for example, would we want different levels like 8, 6, 4, or we want just one level? If you do 5 out of our 9 races, that completes the challenge.
For 10 events.
Or
we have 10
or
events.
10, well, we have 9 for next year, not including turkey trot. I'm not including turkey trot as this.
Okay.
But
So
'cause there's
9 events.
results for that. Yes, it's a fun run. So if you have 9 events for the challenge, would you want a tiered challenge like gold, silver, bronze, or would you want let's just make it one challenge? If you do 5 or 6 or whatever, you get the prize. Whatever the prize.
I like the tiered, again, like gold, silver, bronze kind of a thing.
Okay.
And again, because things happen, you know, well, like this year, Pumpkin Ridge was the same weekend that I was in Minnesota visiting family. I mean, there's no way I could help, you know, and
Yeah.
so that makes me sad that I'll miss out on the President's Challenge. And it's like, well, I want to be with my family, you know, and that happens to everybody, injuries and family stuff. So I think if a tiered award would be a good thing.
And we do have a tiered award this year for the President's Challenge. So that would be keeping with what we did this year, just tweaking the event, tweaking the conditions a little bit. So, okay.
Yeah.
Deb?
So also there's some of the races don't have a shorter event. I'm thinking of Autumn's Leaves is going to be an 18K as the shortest distance,
30K
right?
would be the shortest, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, 30K, 18 miles. And so someone who's used to running 10Ks is going to be like, that one boots me out. So
Find out if there's a reasonable amount that anybody could do.
mhm. But
Deb?
the gold, silver, and bronze. And we could play the Olympic music at the time. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that idea Mark had about the gold, silver, and bronze, just having spent way too many hours on the couch.
Yes, preach.
In the Olympics. Way too many. But also, and I'm guilty of never having gone to the awards banquet, but do we do like a volunteer of the year kind of award? We do, yeah. I really love that idea. Do we make like RDs exempt from it since they are kind of a special breed? Is it sort of like how does that work?
Not necessarily. They can be considered for it. I would say we have 2 different volunteer awards. One is straight out the person who volunteered the most during the year. So we just do a straight count on the master list and say who's volunteered the most. And then we also have one as a special volunteer that like Charissa won this last year. Somebody who did something special this year that helped the club or, you know, something, you know, unique that was really appreciated for that one thing. So there's 2 different ones. So this would be like a third type of, this would be more of a challenge that more people could qualify for.
And do you award it based on the number of times the person volunteered or the number of hours they volunteered?
Times, yeah. Hours we couldn't track.
times. Yeah, it's hard because people stay extra or whatever. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
if I may add-
anything we can do to like get volunteers fired up is
Yeah.
super awesome, and just acknowledging and thanking people. I think it's
Okay.
great.
the Volunteer of the Year award is really outside of numbers. It really is a standout volunteer. I see like 7 or 8 people on this call today have won this at some point, and it's just for being like super volunteer for the year. And I mean, Joe won it one year because one year we were struggling with course measurement, and we were coming up short and long. And so Joe took on working with the race directors to make sure that you're getting the darn courses accurate. So he spent lots of hours in the daytime with the race directors. We were out at Mary S. Young trying to get the Masters 10K accurate because it was off by like a quarter mile. And so that was out above and beyond. Sandy Weeby one time, she got a crew together and they put the mile markers on Terwilliger. And somebody that just does it's not a defined
Yeah.
number of hours or events. It's superstar award.
Yeah.
And their superstar award, and I want to keep that award that way.
Yeah. Oftentimes you'll see spouses of race directors getting the award.
That's the county-wide camp award typically, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or remember one year, this is a long time ago when my kids were still little, but because, well, I was an RD and a volunteer, and every time I bring Dean and the kids along, you know, and people would see us, you know, and that one year, our whole family, the 4 of us, got the Volunteer of the Year award. And maybe we didn't probably do the most events, but you know, there's the Barrett family, and they're out there in the rain. God,
Yeah.
the Trails End Marathon. It was windy and rainy, and I thought my little 2-year-old was just going to blow away in the wind.
Oh, you bragged it.
But
You were at Fort Stevens
So
at an
it's not
intersection. You lost your son.
So we'll do that.
So Charissa, it's not just numbers, it's stories, it's, you know, it's all of that. So that goes into acknowledging volunteers.
Okay, so I'll write up a proposal and just forward it all to you via email to let you know what you think, and we'll start marketing that. Okay. Okay, so recap of events. President's Challenge we're working on, I'm not going to worry about that. Duel, Daniel.
So it was a really nice event. We got a big kiss from the weather. I thought it was really nice. I was in total awe. I was proven wrong on a couple of things. That something that I'm going to have to come around on is that a higher race fee. I don't think it matters because I had 100 people at that event, even though it was $35 to run around and turn left on a track. We had the highest mile participation for the mile event that we've ever had. We only had 3 events. We actually ditched the Devil's Run. I still have a Devil's costume out there that I bought. So next year, if the new race director wants to add that, then they don't have to buy a costume. We also, I think, set up the race well for the future in the fact that we already have, I think, enough ribbons. They're not going to have to order ribbons. And the venue at Catlin Gable, the new race director will have her total autonomy, but I told her that you're never going to find an easier permit than Catlin Gable. It's 2 phone calls, 2 emails, and a check, and you're basically there. We did have a hiccup. We did not have the lights opened, even though we tried to get them. So we did finish in the dark, and we did not have a caboose. I would recommend a caboose if we continue that tradition next year. And if it's a caboose team, then guess what? Whoever's last on that team, then they're the one person that gets the caboose, the last person to finish. So if there's a 4-person team that's last, then whoever the anchor is, they're the caboose. I would recommend that. Apart from that, if I was to do this race again, which I'm not, I would say I wouldn't change a thing except have the lights on for the last hour. The weather was great, the vibe was great. Right as soon as we finished the kids run, I was standing next to Susie, who was taking this race on, and Scott was my nephew, and I was like, look at this. We got 100 people waiting to run here on a day we didn't promote it that much. And I didn't want a lot of fanfare for my last event. I appreciated the little bit that we had, so it was about the perfect tone, I thought, there. And the rest of the race was about all the runners, and we had some really good ones. It was a good day. I would change nothing, really. And I hate to say this, and if anybody quotes me on it, I deny it, but I would keep the fees right where they are. I would keep them high. $35 isn't 40, but and to me 40 is a different animal. But you know, we made money on this race at 35, and the summer solstice we were at 40 and we lost money. So I don't know if there's a theory to it or not, but it was a fun event. It was a good night. Everybody was great. One thing I would do different is I would have a list of volunteers a little bit more dialed in, because we had more volunteers than we needed. And as a result, we're going to be giving away. Oh, that was one more thing. We had about 25% of our entries were comp entries from either being comped or people redeeming there. So we had a high percentage of redeemed. So all I would say, and Tracy told me to bring this up with this report, just be sure you're building that into your budgets, that you could have between 15 and 25% of your people. So if you're projecting 400 runners, project 300 fees, or excuse me, the other way around. Whatever, do the math that way.
Reduce your revenue by 25%.
Figure that you're going to be giving away 20 to 25% of your race people. But other than that, it was great. It was a nice send off. I appreciated the pictures, Charissa. I appreciated the tunnel at the end of my lap. That was kind of special. And so anyways, I thank you all. And for 30, I counted them, 30 that was 30 duels. 38 as either a participant or director, but 30 as a director. So thank you guys all for that. And the race is in good hands, because you guys are not gonna let them mess it up.
Yep.
In particular, an extra special thanks to two people here in this room too. Joe, Mark, those two guys I want to give special thanks to for this race, because they had the unmitigated patience to run this race with me each one year. So, and the year I ran it with, I think was the year I decided we were going to have a 70-yard exchange zone, because dude could run fast and I was running out of breath. So the next event is going to be the Scrabble run, where you're going to run duel, except you set up a Scrabble table and you have the time it takes you to get around your partner, to get around to have the word done. And whatever your score is, you lose that much in seconds.
Oh my God.
So if you can rack up a triple word score there, you can cut a minute off of your time. So that's my next event. Thank you all, and thank you for the great event. It was really nice, and we made $1,500, so good for that.
Good job, Daniel. Did awesome work. Okay, Pumpkin Ridge, a lot of you were there. And I'll just say the new facility that we used was awesome. North Plains Elementary was great. I think the course was better. We know the 10K was slightly long. It was like closer to 6.4 instead of 6.2, because we just didn't figure out where the turnaround was correctly. But the weather was great. Starting early was great. Doing the counterclockwise, so we got off the busy road, was great. Everybody loved the plaques and the medals with the pumpkin logo. They don't have the year on them, so we can reuse them. It just went really, really well. So I heard a lot of positive comments, and we sent out a participant survey, and I would say most of the comments were absolutely positive. I think the only negatives, well, Kathy Gardner had some really excellent suggestions, which I thought we could bring up at the RD meeting, because this would be applied to all races. If we have porta potties on the course, make sure the toilet paper rolls are open, so you're not trying to peel the toilet paper off or the paper off to get it
If you're the
going.
first one.
If you're the first one there. And also in marking the course, there were some parts of the road that had some ruts or potholes in them. And
There was
maybe
construction near this.
there was construction
first
on the
main
first
road.
part, but also on Old Pumpkin
Yeah.
Ridge Road. And just when you're marking the course, maybe putting some chalk around those areas so people don't risk turning an ankle or something. But she said very minor suggestions. She said it was very well run, just little things that might have be a little bit more helpful for runners in the long run. So I thought those were good suggestions, but it went really, really well.
May I make one suggestion, please?
Uh-huh.
For Pumpkin Ridge, since we've had now a successful race as Pumpkin Ridge, can we please, in marketing it, drop the phrase formerly the Garlic Run?
Yes, we'll do
now?
that next year.
Yeah.
We do not need to have, I don't want any mention of that. I had two friends went to the Garlic Festival itself this year. They said it was awful. So I think as far as we can get from now that they want
Yeah.
to distance from us, I think the farther distance
Sure.
we can get. It's got its own identity. We have one in the bank. Let's just grow the new brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Yeah, well, was there, because I was not there, but was there any, from what people said, any negative side to disconnecting from the Garlic Festival?
Not a single.
I think we had one person say, get back to the Garlic Festival. But most of them said it was great being away from it, and the parking was great, and the view course was great, and
They like the less traffic.
they liked the less traffic and the earlier. So, you're not going to please everybody, but yeah, I think except for the one comment saying they really missed the Garlic Festival, everybody else was very positive about it. We did have a lot lower numbers. There was 269
Something like that.
registered versus we had over 650 registered the year before, 550 finishers. So a lot lower turnout, but I think that was because of the changes and probably because of the negative experience last year. So I think we can grow on it with such the positive reviews this year. Okay. Upcoming events, Best Damn Run.
I have a text from Valerie.
Valerie sent a text. What did she say?
She said, everything is on board for Best Damn Run. The girls and boys soccer teams from Estacada will be handling the aid stations. There is a new owner at the Growlery, but he is fine with having the beer garden open,
I don't think we're gonna have.
which I don't think we're going to do that. Paul changed the Beaverton half to the same weekend. I think that's Paula.
With Paula.
Both Paula. So we are expecting about the same turnout as last year because it's competing with the Beaverton half. PGE warned about the possibility of canceling the race if there is extreme fire danger. They suggested we hold the race at a different time of the year, so it seems this is a good time to end this event. So that's her.
If there's a fire, we'll cancel. That's fine.
Yeah, acts of God. And
Yeah.
just a couple notes to it from my end. I know that they, I thought there were plenty of socks left over. They inventoried it and they were able to order more socks so they have enough for the Best Damn Run. And they've also asked me and Hal to be part of the race prep, since we know the course well. That Hal and I will be a couple of key volunteers for the race logistics. And the big question there was last year was, will PGE unlock the gate or not? Because last year they did not, and Ken got to ride the gator on the course, and I don't know if that's going to happen again this year, but we'll figure it out. We got with more advanced time, and we've done it, so it'll all work out.
Cool. Portland Marathon Expo and RD Workshop and aid station. Well, as we all have heard, we are not having an aid station. So the Portland Marathon Expo, I'm going to create the same Google spreadsheet that I did for Shamrock. So that'll have the shifts and then people can just sign up for shifts. Since it's just one day instead of two, hopefully it won't be hard to fill them. Julie and I will set up the booth, and then we'll have to go because the RD workshop's the same day at the library, and then we'll come back and pick up afterwards. So we can't staff it, but we can.
Oh, darn.
Oh, darn. You all know how much I love doing that. Turkey Trot, Mark.
This point, well, the website's been live for 250 people registered. We've capped it, as you all know, at 2,500. So, our weekend we're at 10% already. So, what I find also fascinating is we also have a lot of people already signed up to volunteer, and we probably have already at least 24 volunteers signed up, and I think that's awesome too. Good registration, good volunteer numbers. And not going too far, of course, we had a long discussion about this and a lot of changes, shorter course and all of that, but all those are in place, and the run sign up reflects that. The only other thing is, of course, we're doing the beanies. We have adult size and kid size. Those have been ordered, and those we'll get those in plenty of time, in advance notice, and getting those in. So now it's kind of like just publicity, get it out there. People could put it on the calendar in a little bit. But the stuff that needs to be done at this point in time has been done. Tracy, to ask you any word back from the zoo as far as less money or more animals?
I sent him an email asking, and he said he was going to check with his manager and get back to me, and I have not heard back yet. So, yeah, I'm betting they're not going to do anything, but at least they're having the discussion. Margie?
Are there turkey trots? Are there chocolate turkeys this year again?
Yes.
Yes,
or is
we
it
will do
just
that
a
again.
beanie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we will do the turkeys again. Yeah.
Okay. We had a little snafu at the finish line area where I think we kind of lost a box for a little while, and then so some people didn't get it right at the end.
For the kids ones, there was a mix up.
Yeah. So we'll divvy it up a little better this year at the finish line area.
Thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids be sure to get their beanies and their turkeys and all of that. Yeah. Well, that's
so is that at the finish line then? The beanies will be at the finish line and not like at a shirt kind of giveaway?
No, they'll be at the pickup. They'll be at the pack and pickup.
Okay. Yeah. And then one other quick question then. So if we're going to have chocolate turkeys, we're going to have to do a pack or a stuffing again, right?
Yes.
Turkey stuffing.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a good thing. It's fun.
That was
fun.
It
is. Yeah, and you get to eat chocolate too for the broken ones.
Well, broken ones. Somebody else.
Oh, we don't break them on purpose, do we?
No, not at all. I'm not. Absolutely not.
Okay, so plans around that. Okay, good.
Yeah. Deb,
Do volunteers get a beanie too?
I think we planned beanies for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. We say beanie.
Ooh.
We've ordered enough. We've
All
ordered
right.
enough for all volunteers and all participants to get a beanie. So that does include volunteers. Yep.
Ooh, I better sign up to volunteer too before all the slots are taken.
And the shirts, we are going to have t-shirts, but you have to order them by November 1st. After that, you cannot purchase a shirt, and you cannot buy them day of or exchange them until after the event is over, if there's anything left over. That's what we've told everybody. Yeah, we sent out an email to all prior Turkey Trot participants saying, here's what's changing, here's what's staying the same, here's what you can expect, and blah, blah, blah. So that's it. Cool. That's all I have on the agenda. Does anybody have anything else for the good of the order? Okay. The next month's meeting, we should have, we have at least one community outreach application from Atkinson Elementary to review. I don't know if we'll have any more than that. We could possibly put something, Charissa, on Facebook saying if you're interested in applying for community outreach funds, fill out the application or something, just to let people know the deadline's the end of August for the September meeting. But otherwise, that's all I have. So, Deb.
I just wanted to apologize for not sending the reminder earlier. I remembered to, and then I had a huge race last weekend and I was exhausted. But I have now scheduled them so that the next two meetings, you'll get a reminder 1 week before and a reminder a day and a half.
Cool.
So that they're already pre-scheduled.
Yay, awesome. All right. Well, if that's it, then I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And I will see you, I'll hopefully see a bunch of you at Best Damn Run will be after the meeting. We'll have a September meeting before Best Damn Run. So we'll see you at the September meeting. Cool. All right. Bye.
Right.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.